All right, picking up right where we left off on totaling. We left off right on doing smoke detectors, so finish up your smoke detectors. Once again, the LCDs and the computer and TV exposures that we're giving us with mrems. Give yourself the hours for the TV and the computer. Smoking. If you are a smoker, you are radiating your body. It's not the only health disaster that comes with smoking, but it's one of the other things that you can pick up on. And so give yourself the appropriate smoking number. The smell of cigarette smoke means that you are smelling embedded, which means that there is radiation exposure still within that region. So if you are even smelling cigarette smoke, it means that you are having radiation exposure. So if you happen to live with somebody who's a smoker and you happen to have to smell that, you're having minor radiation exposure. So please give yourself the appropriate number, even if you're just around smokers. Which brings us to medical exposure. Now, the medical exposure is a long list, and this is based on your personal exposure. And this is actually why doctors will ask you things like if you've had any other testing with any other doctors, is because they want to make sure that you haven't been overexposed with different amounts of radiation. While the radiation that your body can handle is one, natural, because we evolved on this planet, so we evolved under a natural amount of radiation. There is unnatural amounts that can affect the body and tip the balance in a negative way. When you think of something like a chemotherapy, it is a radiation exposure therapy that will eventually tip the body to a point where the body might be able to handle that radiation exposure, but things within the body cannot, zapping them out. And they're trying to walk that line of that very thin balance in there. And so it's something to keep in mind what type of radiation exposures you're playing with. But X-ray exposures. So once again, the way it works is I'm bombarding you with electromagnetic radiation. It happens to be small particle waves that can move straight through your squishy parts that bounces off your hard parts, hence why it picks up on things like bone, right? That's where it's coming from, or really dense organs, things like that, depending on the level of wavelength, so the size, proportions of the wavelength, what I'm picking up on and what's bouncing back. So please give yourself a totaling, and there's 2 pages. Here's one for CT scans, and then right below radiation and chemo treatments. And that's why they'll say you've had one treatment, not one session of chemo, but one total treatment over a course of time. When you have a course of time, if you go for one treatment of chemo, which might be done over like 6 weeks, several months, whatever it happens to be, and then they decide to put you through another treatment of chemo, they're talking about 400 mrems and then 400 mrems again. And so that's what they're talking about when they're doing that. But please give yourself an appropriate number and fill it in the box for your various health concerns. Please do this for the course of 1 year. I'm not concerned past the year because your body will have flushed out that material. You have the ability to regenerate. So as the final little bit, please give yourself what your total mrems are. And then there's a small essay question in the assignment basically asking, what is your total number? Do you feel that your exposure limits are high, or what safety limits do you think might be in place? So on and so forth. But the thing to keep in mind is that the standard allowable is 5,000 mrems per year, and that is an allowable, healthy, normal amount. With that said, the average U.S. citizen, now in other parts of the world, they have much higher. So like if you lived in Beijing, China, you are getting way more mrems just from your exposure to pollutants in the atmosphere, right? So your breathing is bringing up a lot more material. But the average person in the U.S. is exposed to 620 mrems. So how do you stack up compared to that average, Talking a little bit about dosage, here is the national average of radiation. This is your regulatory numbers as you're working through. And then we're going to begin talking about nuclear power, but I'm going to actually end this and pick it up with a part 3. So while this looks like a really long set of videos, they're not. I just want to cut everything really cleanly so that everything makes sense.